What's up, folks? Welcome to another episode of the Compile Swift podcast, or video if you're watching the video version of this. Today, I have another very special guest, and this is going to be a great one. And I'm going to try to not, say too many nice things because I use both of these apps. And, I talk about them a lot on the live stream. And this is also someone, if you hang out on the live stream, and if you don't, what is wrong with you? Go to compileswift.com/live stream. But if you will probably know the name, and you will certainly know the tools. And if you don't know the tools, you will by the end of this episode, and you will use them both. One of them in particular has saved my butt so many times as a developer. But Adam Wulf, sir, thank you for joining me. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. It's really good to be here. It's really fun. I am the solo developer for Muse as of about 2 months ago. Worked with a team before that on the application for a number of years. It is a note-taking app. It is designed to really just help you think. So it helps you get the mess outside of your mind onto kind of digital paper. You can figure it out and really come to deep conclusions. And then the other app that we can talk about today is I'm also the developer for Developer Duck, which is a rubber duck programming app that uses ChatGPT, uses some custom prompts and some custom logic to make it developer specific to help you program and think through your programming problems specifically. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
We will put links in the show notes for everything here, and we're going to break this down. And I'm gonna try and keep this on track. But like I say, I do use both of these apps, and I'm going to try to not go down too many rabbit holes or dark holes, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
But let's start with Muse. So first of all, I'm going to take issue with you a little bit here because it is so much more than a note-taking app. I'll give a sort of a quick description here for folks, and then you can do it much better. But I'll base this on how I use the app, right? So to me, I describe it to folks, and I use it as like my brain's whiteboard is how I describe it. Yes, you can take notes with it and everything else, and stuff like that. I also use it for gathering things. So it's been kind of like a drop board for me, where I'll quickly put links in there that I need to go back to and things like that. And one of the things I've started experimenting with recently, and I was going to talk to you about this, but then I thought, no, I'll catch you out on the podcast. That's what I should do. There's the templates in there, and I have started working using a Kanban board in the app. And I've done that by sort of laying out some titles and then just sort of moving the cards around. So for me, it really is put my brain down on a huge whiteboard that I can beautifully zoom in and out on, and link cards and all of those kind of things. But let's dive into it here. That's kind of how I use it. It's my don't let me forget, but please, I know I'm not doing it justice. And it's amazing to me that also it's like one person's working on this. Are you crazy?
It is a lot. It's big. And it's interesting because it is, you can certainly do note taking on it, but when you think of note taking, it's like, okay, you got like the Apple Notes app. You get one giant sheet of paper, it scrolls top to bottom, you can write stuff on it. Good for you, right? Yeah. But in Muse, it's you start out in an infinite whiteboard. Everything you put on it is cards, whether it's a PDF file or images or text or another whiteboard can be a card.
Yeah.
And then you can, on that second whiteboard card, you can zoom in to a completely new infinite canvas. And so you end up building out a tree structure of infinite canvases that contain more infinite canvases inside of them. And then on top of that, you can start linking between them. So instead of a tree structure, it's a graph structure of all of these infinite whiteboards connecting to each other back and forth. So it's deceptively simple the first time you open the app, because you're like, great, giant white space. I can put stuff on it. I can write with a pencil. No big deal. And then it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper the more that you use it and the more that you build things out. So Yeah, it's the same for me. I have a personal Muse for me and my wife and my family, and we track our house stuff and, you know, auto insurance and just things for life. And then I obviously use it for work as well, and have a expansive board for tracking to-do lists for Muse and for Developer Duck and for all of the developer tasks, Kanban board style, but also marketing tasks and also meetings that I have, or if I'm tracking down a particularly nasty bug, then I'll open up a board and I can put all of the information for that bug and kind of organize my thoughts around what may or may not be the cause and different paths and tracks that I've tried out. And so, yeah, it's you know, on day one, it's a note-taking app, but on day 30, as you're using it, it really becomes a second brain and a second active brain. It's not a database. It's not a personal knowledge management kind of thing. It can be, but it's an active thinking space for your brain for sure.
Oh yeah, and what I like about it here, you know, is the sort of this infinite space, because I know sort of me and how my brain works, and when I'm in, you know, that capturing phase, which I think this is kind of key here, you know, very symbolically, just like a huge white space, that's how my brain works, right? Is you know, this bit here, this bit there, dumping it all over the place in a very non-linear way. And what I've found is, you know, not to pick on Apple Notes here, which is goes from strength to strength every release, but the reason those kind of tools don't work for me when I'm in that phase is the fact that they are very linear list based, right? Whatever that may be, text and then an image and then so on, it's always in a list form. So it gets you thinking in that space in a very list oriented, structured kind of way. And when I'm doing my brain dumps on things, I'm very not structured and purposefully, because at that stage I'm telling myself, you know, don't be structured. I'll give you an example, right? So I recently released a update from one of my games, and when I was working through that, you know, I knew the things I wanted to do, but I had no idea necessarily how some of the things were going to come together. And what I also liked is not only can I use this app on the Mac, but more importantly, perhaps, in that phase, I can use it on my iPad. So I pick up the pencil and I'm literally just drawing boxes all over the place, right? I'm almost using it like a drawing app at that stage. And sort of a box here with this and an arrow pointing to it, and then this links to this. You know, those kind of things that you just can't easily do in everyday kind of brain capturing apps, you know, things like to-do lists and things like that, where it's like, that's always more a case of, I've got my things, now I need to structure them, right?
Exactly.
And so I like that infinite space of just put it down, really, right?
Yeah. That really echoes what a customer sent in very recently. They said, man, so when I use Apple Notes and I'm collecting these thoughts and I, you know, want to drop a link in there and a picture and this other link, I have to decide immediately where in the note to put it. And so before I've even been able to think through the problem, I have to already start putting structure to the problem. So it feels like the process ends up backwards for tools like that. Whereas in Muse, you can just start pushing content in, and you don't actually have to decide where it goes at all. You can dump them all in a giant pile on a whiteboard, or, you know, start even categorizing things spatially a little bit. Of this is kind of similar to this, so I'll put it over on this side of the board, and these three things kind of relate, so I'll put them down at the bottom. But you don't have to decide yet. And that, I think, is really part of the magic. Is it lets your thought process digitally in the tool mirror how we do things, you know, internally in our minds already, which is let me just collect what the inputs are. Okay, now that I have all the inputs, I can start to think through them and process them and get to the end result.
Now, I am curious, you know, from a sort of the technical side here, like you say, you know, you took this over, and I've always wondered, you know, applications like this, you know, it's that thing of, I look at it, I'm like, where do you even start, right? Especially as when you say like infinite canvas, and or even just, I know of some apps where it's like it's not infinite, it's just very big. But from a technical standpoint, how do you approach these kind of problems when it comes to not only building something like that, but thinking about and please don't give away any secrets here, but how do you store this kind of data in an application?
Yeah,
those kind of things.
Yeah, I think Muse is one of the most interesting projects that I've worked on for exactly that reason. The way that the data is structured and the way the application is structured. At its foundation, it relies on a technology called CRDT, which is a conflict-free replicated data type, is what that means. And so all of the data for Muse and for the stuff that you work on is saved locally on device. Whereas if you use something like Notion or Google Docs or any of the other myriad of applications, all of your data lives on Google server. And then when you interact with it, the Google server sends back a small piece of it, and you get to work on that small piece. With Muse, the entire system is flipped, so you have 100% of your data locally on device. You can work on it with or without an internet connection, completely offline, completely online. And then the application sends very small deltas of your changes to the Muse sync server, which then sends those changes down to your other devices, which also have a complete full copy of your data. And then that conflict-free, the CRDT, the conflict-free replicated data type, handles merging that data in a way that does not show the merge edits that we're all used to in Git. There's a merge conflict. Please come fix it. The data types we use automatically fix conflicts, no matter what.
Interesting.
And there's some ways that we've structured the data so that way when conflicts happen, because conflicts inevitably happen, it's just that they get automatically resolved. So for example, if my Mac is offline and my iPad is offline, I change the same card or the same image. I move it in two different places. The way that Muse is set up, it's just last write wins is the structure, right? And so I move the card and I move the card on my second device and they both synchronize with each other. And then they both know when the other one edited it. And so they both decide, the iPad wins because it was the most recent. So they both agree now when that happened.
Very interesting.
So then the magic and the reason I can maintain this as a single developer is in a traditional application, you have a giant pile of logic on the device for business logic about how cards act and how the canvas acts and how pencils act and all that sort of stuff. And then you also have that same logic on the server because the server has to know about cards and pencils and all that sort of stuff. So you end up building a lot of the same logic in two different places. With the CRDT logic, I'm just sending very small edits to the server that are actually opaque to the server. The server doesn't really care what the edits are because the conflict resolution happens on device. So our entire server is actually very, very dumb. It knows who I am. It knows who my devices are. And then it just kind of helps route my data to my other devices and to myself. And so I can build entirely new features without touching the server at all, which lets me iterate, thousands of times faster than I could if I had to build new web services and new server logic and new permission systems and all the stuff on the server. I don't have to do any of that. I can just build entirely locally on my Mac, and then I get sync essentially for free just by moving all of my edits through a pretty simple, the server, 2,000 lines of code, something like that. Like it's a very, very simple server to push data back and forth.
That's fascinating because you have to make a choice, right? With this kind of thing, like you say, you're either going to have very smart application, very simple backend, or very complicated backend, very simple application. And I've pretty much always worked the other way around just because of what the applications need. So, I'm used to kind of that dumb application is only as good as the data it gets, right?
Right. Yep.
But the problem with that is, yes, first of all, you're going to need, you need to either be really good at the client app and the back end, or you need someone else to do the back end for you, which now is a dependency of people, right? And then you've got, now we're talking API and right exchange in between and things like that, plus the maintenance of the back end, and the back end has to be up, right? Arguably, one of the biggest flaws there is the back end has to be up. Whereas on the flip side, the way you're doing it here, you have the added bonus of great privacy because it's on the device.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with that, though, a question I have is, does the data persist on the back end, or is it purely used as a pass-through mechanism? Meaning, if I was to delete the app from all of my devices, what happens with that data?
Yeah, so the data that's synchronized through the server does persist on the server.
Okay.
And so if you drop your laptop in a lake and that was your last device, you can go buy a new laptop, log into your account, and all of your data synchronizes back down to your account. And so in that way, the cloud does what it's good at. It provides kind of a backup. It provides synchronization between clients. But then the client is able to do what it's good at. It has 100% of the data, so now there's no loading screens, there's no spinners, there's no, hold on, let me go fetch that. If the server's down, that's fine. You can keep working. If you're on an airplane, that's fine. You can keep working. If I go out of business, that's okay. You can keep working, right? And so you get a lot more security controlling your own data than you do keeping everything in a traditional cloud service.
And I love this because, that's kind of one of my things is, I'm that guy that, even as I talk to you now, right under the desk below me is my NAS with
right. I'm the same way. Right? Like I need to, I need to make sure I control my data and I have backups of my data. And if if Google has some horrible shut off, but if Google CEO falls apart, right, and gets split up into 3 different companies or antitrust or whatever, right? I know that my data is safe no matter what.
Big win for you right there is, hey, your privacy is better than a lot of these other services.
Exactly, and it also opens up. Right now, the Muse sync service is the only sync service that we offer, but it opens up the possibility for you to run your own sync server. And so then you can download the Muse app. You can get all of the benefits of me sending out updates and improving the app and everything like that. But then you could sync through your own server entirely, or peer-to-peer sync through your own just home Wi-Fi, just device to device directly.
Love that.
Without a server. And so there's a number of different things that I'm looking into that this kind of architecture allows that a traditional cloud architecture would not allow. There's no way on earth that Notion would ever even have the technical possibility of something like this. And so that's what I think excites me most about local first software, which is Muse is one piece of that kind of environment. But it gives control of the data and control of your privacy to you, the end consumer. And then me, as the app developer, I get to do the part that I like, which is build cool features and build cool apps. But I don't have to worry about, building some enormous monolithic server application and server side process. So there's a lot of benefits to it.
I'm sure, you as the developer, you and I have spoken before, of course, we both deal with large amounts of data, for different things. And it's a responsibility, right, that the developer, you just never want to have, unless you're a
the less I know about your stuff,
data.
The better. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. It's like, I don't want your data. I don't want to be responsible for your data. And like you said, like the sync service, I want as little to go through me as possible. So that's good too. And the idea of like a local sync and things like that is always appealing. You know, I guess maybe we'll keep an eye out for the future Muse server licensing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I'm eager for over the next months is how can I open source pieces of the Muse architecture? How can I potentially open source the server? If not open sourcing the server, could I at least offer like a peer-to-peer, device-to-device sync that doesn't even need a server, which in many ways is even better, right? Because there's less maintenance for the end user to do. When they want that privacy, they can just, use their Wi-Fi. No big deal.
Right.
So that's definitely things that I'm looking into, and that's a wonderful benefit of this kind of architecture. Is it's privacy first, and it's user control first.
Yeah. And I do want to say to the users, again, I'm a user of this app, right? It's not that it's not one of these where I just think it sounds cool. No, I use the app, and like I say, I use it on my iPad and on my Mac, but I do want to say to the users that Adam is very responsive to conversations and discussions about features and issues and things like that, which is also great. I love that you're open to these ideas as opposed to the other problem can be sometimes when you have teams or basically more than one or two people making decisions for these things is it becomes a case of, okay, well, we've got our roadmap and we're going to stick to that, right?
Right, yeah.
As opposed to going with, well, if my users want this thing, but I'm not sure, but if that's what they want, that's the route I'm going,
Yeah, exactly. And so literally every single day, I carve out time to make sure I'm answering all the emails, making sure I'm responding to everyone. We have a very vibrant Discord community as well, where folks jump in and chat about best practices or questions or features or bug reports or requests or all that sort of stuff. And so the community within Muse is really the guiding light for where the application goes. And the most important foundation, the roots that really grow the tree, is the simplicity of Muse, the simplicity of the interface, and and keeping that data local on device so that everything is quick, everything is fast, and so that way you can think problem solve without worrying about if the internet connection just flickered because of the storm outside or because you need to travel and you're going to be offline or in a remote area or anything. You can just work, and you don't even have to. All of the worries you have with other tools just kind of disappear, and it becomes transparent to you. And so that's what I love about responding to customers is you really see how ideas and how requests and how bug reports bubble up to the top of, okay, this is something that really the community is looking for, really people want, and it makes my job easier because my job is to be a listener, to be a guide for the product, and to empower users and empower these customers to use the tool to its best potential.
You're right, because we know as developers it's so easy for us to become absolutely obsessed with a bug that nobody else cares about. Right?
Yeah, this thing that doesn't actually impact any of the customers at all, but it's intellectually stimulating to solve, and so it's easy to get sucked in. Yeah,
and that's interesting too, because I know a lot of really fantastic developers who get in that mindset. They become so obsessed with how technically brilliant something is that it prevents them from, shipping an update or whatever it may be, as opposed to, get it functional, give the users what they need. And I've said in other episodes, I think, the users don't care how the code looks. right?
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
don't. They just need the magic to happen. And I think, like you say, with the simplicity of Muse, and it, I always reminds me of the things that are simple to use are so incredibly complicated to build, because you're abstracting away the complexity. If you was to sit down and say, build an app like Muse in the real world with notepads, it's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I'm not
the
sure,
constraints
but
of the problem.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to find infinite paper. They do not stock it down at your local store, But it is, and it's so easy to become obsessed with the technical side that I love when I can put that different hat on and says, pretend to be a user for the next hour, right? And like you say, read those user reports, and see how does that work with you. One other thing I want to touch on Muse here before we move on, though, is if there's one feature I've not quite wrapped my head around or found a way to embrace it yet, and I'm curious if maybe I can sort of get a little bit of the roadmap out of you here, is the templates, right? So there's this feature where you have templates. Now, firstly, hey, I may be doing this completely wrong, listeners. So take that, anyone who's ever watched my live stream knows that I've been known for getting things wrong occasionally. So the templates that, there's a list of templates in there that you can work with. Is that list of templates going to grow? And secondly, will I ever be able to create my own templates in some fashion?
You'll be happy to hear yes on both counts. So there are going to be more templates coming, and then you are also going to be able to create your own templates.
Oh, fantastic!
Yes, that's been requested a number of times, and so that's excellent. That's close to the top for sure.
A tool that lets me work the way I want to work, and now hearing that I know my patterns of work and I'll be able to put that into something. That's a huge deal right there.
It's really a part of a bigger focus of mine, which is to help. Muse has always been an incredibly simple tool, because with very, very simple primitives, infinite paper, cards of various data types, and ink, that solves the overwhelming majority of problems that you're trying to think through, just with very, very simple primitives.
Fantastic.
And so the next piece is, as Muse continues to grow and gets things like templates and gets things like collaboration, which just shipped, and gets these new features, it's very easy for applications to drown themselves in accidental complexity. And what used to be a beautifully simple application suddenly has 1,000 different features that I don't even use. And so letting people customize Muse and pare down Muse to just the pieces that they care about the most, templates being one, being able to customize the sidebar and kind of turn on and off tools that they don't need. That's a really big piece of it, because the beauty of Muse is how it gets out of your way to let you think. And a lot of this focus over these next months is continued iteration on helping Muse get out of your way.
Great. Is there anything else you want to mention here? So I just to remind folks, we'll put links in the show notes, but talk about, Muse as well, from the perspective of, like free, paid, and so on, because, that's important.
So yesterday was my birthday.
Happy birthday.
And thank you. And as part of my birthday, I decided, I've worked on Muse for, I think, 4 years now. Okay. And I'm just 2 months into solo development. And I have loved every moment of it and have appreciated the community. And so for my birthday, I gave out a 50% off to the unlimited annual plan. Wow. 24 hours only, that's it. Okay. I know this podcast is not literally going to get released in this very next moment, but if any of your listeners would like that 50% off, give me a shout and we can work it out and I can send you a code.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for that, folks. Do it. Just do it. Trust me, right? We'll put that link in the show notes.
It is a free app. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
It is a free app, and so anyone is able to download it. They can use it for free forever if they want to. It is only limited by the number of cards that you can put down. And so some users who don't want to pay for it, which, hey, fair enough, they will export cards as a Muse bundle, as kind of an archive format, and then delete them from the app to keep their card count low. And so they can just use it forever. Great. If you'd like to support me and support development, which I would certainly appreciate, then you can buy a subscription, either monthly or annual. And there's 2 different tiers that give you unlimited cards. And then you can have multiple different workspaces and multiple collaborators on those workspaces. So you can invite other people to work with you in real time or asynchronously. So it is
Fantastic.
free forever. And then the plans start at $3.99 a month as the professional tier plan, and that unlocks unlimited cards, multiple workspaces, multiple collaborators, the whole bit.
You know what? I mean, again, I can't help but be biased here, but folks, go ahead and do it. Right? The reason I say that is, once you start using a tool like this, and you get into the ways you develop that system that you use, and you start putting in data, the last thing you want to do is to suddenly hit a cap at the wrong moment, right?
Yeah.
Perfect examples here. I'll give you 2 examples. You're in that brain dump mode, and something, even if you have every intention of upgrading to something else, the last thing you need is anything that's going to break the flow of that brain dump mode, right? And then secondly, if you're in a meeting or something like that, and you're jotting these things down, you don't want to be like, oh, I'm out of cards. So, folks, trust me, the price is priceless. All right, I want to talk about another app here, and this is one of those apps. It's I guess, depends on where you sit, right? Yes, folks, it involves AI and developers, so it's either going to be controversial or a lifesaver, but I'm going to tell you my story. Here's my story, right? Sit around the campfire. I resisted apps that helped me from an AI perspective because I was afraid that it's like, okay, it's not going to go great like everybody else. And then Developer Duck came along, and some folks on my live stream kept telling me, you should try this. And it's like, all right, I'm going to try it. So downloaded Developer Duck, again, link in the show notes, and I was sold. But the reason I was sold is 2 things. Firstly, it has Xcode integration, obviously of huge importance for folks like ourselves, and probably a majority of folks listen to this podcast. So that's number 1. But number 2, it does such a great job. And I want to start out just quickly by giving a couple of real world examples. Again, if you've ever watched my live stream, and Adam's been there, he's seen this happen. I'm one of those people. I write my code out in long form so that I can understand it, know what's going on, and then bring it back in and make it look slightly more respectable on the live stream so that all my developer friends don't make fun of me. But also sometimes, you just need to know the answer to something. And it's worked for me both ways. And so that's really what Developer Duck does here. It's like my assistant for solving problems, asking questions, and making things better. But the most astounding thing that happened to me, and Adam, I know you've heard me say this before, was I had some code, and it was one of those terrible long if statements. Not that anybody but me has ever written one of those, so I've given everyone a get out of jail right there. But I had one of those, and I knew it's like, a case statement is the way to make this better. But, it's a case of, well, I could write this, or, I think we did this on a live stream, and I think, Adam, you were there when I did this, was like, let's test this thing. So I was working in SpriteKit on something. I took the code, took it over to Developer Duck, essentially typed in, I think, like, make this code better, gave it the code, and, within a few seconds, sure enough, it did. and it was a case statement, but it also recognized the repetitive code and broke it out into a function and things like that. And then, not satisfied that I had tried to insult it enough, I decided to give it another go. And here's the big one, right, folks? We've all done this. I'm the only person in the world that doesn't document my code. Let's put that out there.
Of course.
But yeah, right. But I selected the code and asked it to document my code. And dang, if it didn't do it. And, I'm sitting here watching this tool explain to me in straightforward, everyday language what my code was doing. And it wrote it in a way that the documentation was better than I was ever going to do. Because, let's be fair, I had every intention of writing that documentation 6 or 7 months from
That's
now.
right. Just after this next line of code to write.
That's it. Exactly. I'll just get
There's
to
one
that.
more line of code. Right.
That's it. But it documented my code and explained it flawlessly. So I just want to set that up there for folks. But yes, talk to us about Developer Duck. Explain where it came from, how it is so unbelievably clever, and why I can retire early and let it do my work for me.
Exactly. Yeah, it's when ChatGPT launched, the first thing I did, of course, was say, okay, write this code for me. Like, show me bubble sort, right? Just a very easy thing. And sure enough, it spit out some code. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. This is not just an English language kind of thing, but this is a code thing? Really?
Yeah.
And so I used it, off and on I don't really quite understand this piece of code. Let's just see what the chat thing says before I go to Stack Overflow. And I got surprisingly competent answers most of the time. Sometimes it's wrong, of course, but sometimes it kind of led me on the right direction. But it was very verbose, and it was just so long in its answers and so chatty in its answers. And I thought, once the API came out, I was like, okay, what if I could take ChatGPT, which is surprisingly good on its own, but get it to just make it a bit more concise, like brevity, please. Or sometimes I just want it to give me a code sample without any of the extra, 3-paragraph long explanations. And so that's what I set out to do, was use the API, give it some custom prompts so that I get higher quality answers with less just chattiness generally. So it's very concise in its higher quality answers. And then through this process, I've learned all kinds of different things about language models. Like if you prompt a language model to say, you are an expert in Swift, please analyze the Swift code, you're going to get a higher quality answer than if you just don't prompt and tell it that it's a expert Swift developer, because it's doing autocomplete basically, right? Like it's predicting based on all of the text that it's ever seen. And so in prompting it that it is an expert Swift developer, you are helping the language model narrow down what kind of data it's using for its autocomplete, basically, right? It's going to start, it's going to default to saying, oh, okay, these Stack Overflow answers, these like high quality hacking with Swift and Swift by Sindel and a number of other blogs that are really high quality, it's going to start leaning on those a lot more than generic Google results or kind of the rest of its learning library. So you get higher quality results with how you prompt it, which was kind of amazing. And so that's what Developer Duck does, is it gives a high quality prompt so that way ChatGPT is using the best of its knowledge to answer you. It's also chaining some of these things together so that way it's replying with the type of reply you most want, whether it's a code block or an explanation in English or comments or anything else. So it ends up being, in my opinion, a quicker, higher quality output than just a typical ChatGPT chat instance. And it's been a really helpful rubber duck for me, especially for questions thinking about okay, I need to solve this problem. I've never really solved this problem before, which is, most of coding.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the word is to describe this algorithm. So you can just kind of start explaining to Developer Duck like you would another human, and then Developer Duck comes back with all of the jargon that you need to search Stack Overflow and to narrow down to the answer that you need. Suddenly you know what the API is to look for in Apple's documentation. Suddenly you know where you should start looking generally for the answer. And so I've found that extremely helpful as well. Maybe it'll give me the answer straight away. Going through AI, you short circuit that so you get to the answer faster. And then once you have the answer, the onus is still on you to say, okay, let me make sure I understand this before I just ship it out the window.
Yeah.
And so the tool lets me get to the end quicker. And especially being a programmer, I can validate the output that it gives me and say, yes, this is reasonable code. It did not insert a SQL injection, or it did not, there's not bugs in here that I need to look at. But it's a tool like anything else that we use, a debugger, all of the analyzers that we use in Xcode to find memory leaks or strong references or reference cycles or anything like that. It's just another tool in the toolkit to help us write better software.
Well, and also, touching on that there, if you are doing something and you don't know what that is, like for example, you said right there, thanks to Swift and things these days, you don't have to know as much about memory management as you once did. So if you come across something that's like you say, it's like retain cycle or strong reference or something like that, and we've all been there, right? At some point, you're like, I don't want to ask people because that'll be embarrassing and they might make fun of me. But you can ask these tools, what is a strong reference, right? And it'll explain it. And it's not going to judge. Well, I don't think it's going to judge you. Maybe, But so you can use it as a learning tool for asking those questions that maybe you don't want to ask someone. But also, as you said, it's a case of, it used to be, I've got my reference books on the shelf. If the answer's not there, I'm in trouble, and also what if I don't know what the question is? Well, you can look through books all the time until the end of time. It's not going to help you if you don't know what the question is. But if you've got a tool like AI where you can try to, over time, figure out the right question. We've all done it, right? There's nothing worse. You Google something and absolutely nothing comes back. And the first thing you realize is, I'm asking the wrong question.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think the times it's helped me the most are when I don't know the jargon to ask. I know the problem I need to solve, but I don't know the jargon about the solution. I don't know the algorithm name or the data structure name or whatever it is. So I can describe the problem, and it gives me back the jargon, as well as maybe even a potential solution. And so then I can say, okay, now I have enough foundation in my own language to say, okay, now I know what to research. Now I know what to go read and know how to verify this solution. The other time it's been really helpful is when I have a problem and the only way to describe that problem is using just like very general terms of, I have a memory cycle between these two functions and this object. How do I solve it? Well, that's not something I can type into Google or Stack Overflow or anything else, because it's just going to spit back very general answers of retain cycles are bad. Yes, I know. I'm trying to fix that, right? But with a tool like Developer Duck, I can paste in my source code. I can paste in the problem that I'm trying to solve and describe it. And it can talk to me very specifically about my exact situation and my code and I've pasted in crash reports and the source code related to the crash report and saying like, why? Like, I don't know why this is crashing. Give me some possible scenarios, like brainstorm with me what I need to look into. So all sorts of those questions are wonderful. And what I particularly love about using Developer Duck in particular, as well as I'm sure a number of other tools do this, using the API, I can opt out with OpenAI and say, with this key, with my company name and with my account, do not use any of the data that I send to you for training,
Mm-hmm.
which means all of my conversations in Developer Doc are now private. Essentially, they're not going to get recycled into, the OpenAI monolith, into ChatGPT's history. It's something where ChatGPT is going to use its existing knowledge to talk about my code, but it's not going to incorporate my code into its knowledge.
Yes.
Which makes me a lot more comfortable sharing code that might otherwise be, entirely private, entirely, copyright safe.
And that is a big problem. I know that, for example, in my day job, we have been told, at least right now, don't use AI tools for that very reason, right?
Right. Yeah.
Not because you can't. It's not even a case of don't trust the results it gives you. It really is don't feed the algorithm.
Right.
Even accidentally something, because yes, I mean, once it's in there, right? And if someone's looking to do bad things with one of your apps, and you accidentally put in some reference, and then one day they're like, hey, how can I get in to hack the API on Developer Doc or something like that? Well, if it's in the model, it's going to spit it back.
Yeah, if it's memorized that code inside of its training, then all of a sudden it can, spit that code verbatim out to somebody else, or I mean, who knows what, right? It can cause problems. And
let's talk about licensing on it here, because again, as we said earlier, support the folks that make tools for you.
Yeah. So it's free to use. I think I give you what amounts to 50 cents of credit, which, because ChatGPT is so cheap, ends up being
it's a lot.
Like the entire text of Moby Dick or something like it. It's an enormous amount of text you get for free. And then after that, you can subscribe. And that subscription helps the development, obviously, but it helps run the server, because the requests do go through my server to get the prompt customized and to be able to be fed to whatever the latest models as things get updated. So that's helpful. It starts out, I think the cheapest plan.
I remember thinking.
Here we go. $4.99 is the.
There you go.
Yeah. It's very low, but it's actually on discount right now as well. And so there's a December discount. I think it's at least half off. Oh, go ahead. Yeah. You can switch between the version 3.5, which is pretty smart for most things, or you can use 4 and their very latest models.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
GPT-5. So you can pick whichever model you want, and you can almost ask them both and switch mid-conversations. That way you get, if you feel like you're not getting the smart enough answer yet, ask the version one layer up. And see if it's a bit.
These tools, if you put them in the context of how much you pay every year for coffee, let's just start there, right? It's nothing, folks, and it will vastly improve your productivity, your learning, right? It's a learning resource too. These are things that we will use every day in our jobs. And again, reward your tool makers to make better tools, and to just say, thank you for saving me the nightmare, So I do want to put that out there, strongly emphasize, again, on both of these tools, Muse as well. Is there anything else here? Sorry, go on.
I appreciate that. No, I think that's perfect. It is more than paid for itself for me. And I happen to build it, but if I had not built it, I would have bought it from somebody else, because it saves so much time for me in that research step.
That's
it is
important.
more than paid for itself in my own time during work.
And that's something else that I love to hear, and I hear this so often. And this is, I think, when developers are making the things they're supposed to be making, because you use it yourself. So you're going to feel the rewards and the pain of the users, right? And
exactly.
I often say, I think that the best tools we make, right, are the ones that we make to use ourselves, not necessarily the ones that we make for our clients, because we are living the pros and cons right there with everybody on a daily basis. So that almost, I don't want to say guarantees, but it certainly says, look, this thing's got a future, right? And it's not going to be just a one-hit thing and gone away tomorrow. Again, all the more reason to support developers. Is there anything else here we haven't covered on Developer Duck you want to dive into?
Oh, I think we've covered a lot. That's everything on my end. I've enjoyed every moment. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, we'll have to have you back to so many other things that we can talk about here, Swift development and everything else. And it struck me as we were talking here. I got to test this, but maybe I'll do it on a live stream so that I can embarrass myself yet again. I know I do it every week, folks. But another great use for something like Developer Duck, I'm guessing, would be, for example, taking something that you find in Objective-C and saying, show me a Swift version. Because I'm still living that pain of migrating code bases from Objective-C to Swift. I know I'm not the only one, but that's another great way to A, learn, and B, get it done, right?
Absolutely.
Another use for the tool. Maybe that's my recommendation there. Let's put a request in for something in Xcode in the integration that just says convert this to, and then choose
convert
Swift.
to, or write unit test for.
That's the one.
Yeah,
that's the
a
one.
good
Yeah,
one.
that's my next one. Write my test so I don't have to. It'll fit on a button, right?
or reverse. You write the test and it writes the implementation until it passes the test. That would be.
Wouldn't that be an interesting thing?
That'd be a trick.
That would be interesting to try that. Yeah. All right. Well, conscious of the time here, Adam. Thank you, my friend. I have been looking forward to this. Oh, you're more than welcome. I have been looking forward to this conversation, because, again, I can't say enough nice things about these tools. I would love to say, I did find something that was wrong, but it turns out it was there all the time. So, it was me. Who knew? Everybody. But, thank you so much for your time on this. And make sure, send me those links. We'll put them in the show notes and that, folks. But, again, along with his socials and everything else, take advantage of these offers while they're out there, because these tools, I can't tell you how much they've changed my day. They really have. And I'm one of those people who's always looking for something to make life easier so I can focus on the things I should be doing. And these two tools right here enable me to do that. So, Adam, thank you so much, my friend, for making these tools, putting them out there, and for coming along today to talk about it. I really hope we've convinced a lot of people to at least go try them, but more importantly, go get them and support Adam in his work. And I can't even imagine how wonderful these tools are going to be tomorrow. Thank you, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. I enjoyed every second of it. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Again, folks, links in the show notes for everything. That's what we got for you here in this one. We will leave it there, and we will speak to you next time. Thank you.